Hello and welcome to Aliens Revealed Live. I'm your host, Dean Caparella, here on the Paranormal UK radio network. From alien abductions to monster-infested ranches to men in black, we speak to some of the most amazing people on the planet, ready and willing to share their chilling stories with you. All from the Aliens Revealed Live files here on the Paranormal UK radio network. Well, the 1970s produced some amazing alien abduction stories. None more compelling than that of Calvin Parker and Charlie Hickson in the Pascagoula Incident. The Pascagoula Incident garnished worldwide attention at a time when alien abduction was considered more shocking than it is today. Calvin Parker says he can better remember now his traumatic alien abduction than he could closer to when the event took place. Parker and friend Charles Hickson were fishing on the east bank of the Pascagoula River on the night of October 11th, 1973. What was to follow couldn't have been scripted. Parker and Hickson came face to face with ETs and their experience was the centre of mass media attention. He describes in vivid detail the trauma he and Hickson went through. They were taken on board an alien spacecraft and their lives changed forever. For Parker, at just 19 years of age, this is one of those alien abduction stories that couldn't have come at a worse time, as he had just started a new job. He's remained reasonably tight-lipped about his experience until recent years, before deciding to tell his story. Parker feels by talking about what happened to him, it may encourage others to come forward. Many reported UFO encounters are slowly forgotten over time. Because Pascagoula happened so long ago, there's always a chance people will forget it. The Pascagoula incident will never be forgotten, however, with recent news that it will be made into either a television series or a movie. And Pascagoula appears to have attracted a new audience. Calvin Parker joins us now. Hi, Calvin.
Hey, how are y'all today?
I'm good. Calvin, it's been, well, what's it been, 46 years since it happened. You decided to remain in the background for a long time. Why did you decide to come out and tell your story in recent years?
Well, I really didn't want to come out. It's kind of forced on me by Philip Mantle and my wife. So, but if it was left to me, they never would have been the first book. But I'm glad I did since I've done it. And what started this, we had a neighbor pass away, and we went to his wake. And while I was at the wake, I accidentally signed the register at the wake, and people started recognizing my name and coming up wanting to talk about this. And we didn't feel like that was a place to talk about it. So I told my wife, let's get out of here. And on the way home, she said, well, why don't you write a book? People care and they want to hear the story. And I've never heard the story. Well, you keep a secret from your wife for 45 years, eventually you're going to have to break down and tell them something. I said, well, let me think about this a little while. So I thought about it, and I just told her something to get her off my back. I said, well, I don't have much of education. If I can find a ghostwriter, maybe I will. Mm-hmm. And that was just something to shut her up and get her off my back. Well, just so happened the very next day, Philip Mantle got a hold of me, and he had been hunting me for a while, not to write a book or anything, but to ask me some questions about Charlie's book. And of course, I really didn't know anything because I've never read Charlie's book, never opened it up. So he said, why hadn't you written your own book? I said, well, Philip, the reason I hadn't, because every time I tell the story, somebody changes it. They add to it or take away from it or don't do it any kind of justice. And I'm just not going to get in that situation. He said, well, think about it. He said, if you write a book, it's black and white, it's documented, and that's just the way that it's going to be. It's your word, it's your legacy. Well, it did make pretty good sense. He said, well, I'll call you back in a week, and we'll talk about this some more. So when I got off the phone with Philip, I just took my phone and put no answer by his phone number because I didn't want to talk about this subject anymore.
Right.
And I was at the boat landing, pulling my boat up on the trailer, and my phone kept ringing. And I thought maybe something was wrong at home, or it might be one of the kids or something like that. So I just picked the phone up and answered it without looking at the no answer part. And it was Philip, and I didn't want to be rude and hang up on him then. So he said, "Have you thought about the book?" I said, "Philip, as I told you before, I don't have much of an education. And, I really don't want to do no book." He said, "Well, think about it." We talked about it a few minutes, and he started making a little bit of sense by this time. And I said, then we talked a little more, and I said, it's one way that I would do this. And the only way is the book is in my words. I want it written in my words. I don't want nothing changed. I don't want a period put in. I don't want a question mark put in. I don't want anything put in that I don't put in there. And he agreed to that. And bless his heart, he stood by his word. I mean, he's done a great job. He changed one thing, and that's language communication thing that we had. And it was at the back of the book where I was eating a bologna sandwich. He put down a blondie sandwich. And that was the only thing that got changed in the book, and it kind of tickled me, so I just didn't say nothing about it. Because, I went 45 years, and people's changed a lot more than that.
Well, the book was called Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, and then you followed it up with another book, The Story Continues. Why did you do that? Was there other evidence and stuff that had come up that you wanted to include?
Yes, sir, it was. And, I really enjoyed the second book. Actually, I listened to the first book on the audio that came out about it. But the second book, I've actually picked this up and read it 2 or 3 times because it's new evidence and new witnesses. And it just amazed me after all these years that Philip Mantle was able to dig up the things that he's dug up, the different facts and details and testimonies. And then, of course, we had all these new witnesses come forward. And that amazed me how they could keep quiet like I did for 45 years. And so I really got into the second book because I was a little freely opening up about the subject and talking about it. And, I wasn't that way on the first one.
Why do you think the new witnesses that came forward stayed quiet for so long instead of basically allowing you to go through everything you went through in those early years?
Well, it's probably the same reason that it happened to me. Back when this first happened, you got ridiculed quite a bit over something like this. And the South is deep Christians, and religions, and anything other than God or other than what they want to talk about, you get ridiculed pretty hard. So I just thought it was best to stay quiet. Now, they really didn't come forward up until we asked them to, and the way that came about, I did a show with Fox News, and you know how they make the little comments under the news things there,
Mm-hmm.
Well, we was just reading the comments, and Philip happened to see where one of them's daughter had said, "My mother seen this when it happened 45 years ago, and she's never talked about it because my dad told her that she'd be crazy to talk about it." Well, of course, that got our attentions because we had this book coming out. We was wanting witnesses. So Philip's like a bloodhound dog. He got on the hunt. And when he gets on a hunt, on a quest, he's on it. So he managed to contact the daughter, and she reluctantly gave him her mom's phone number or contact information. And Philip made all the contacts and all. And sure enough, I've met her several times since then, and there's no doubt in my mind, what she says is not true. one thing, I was there with her, but she was across the river though.
Yeah, yeah. Did
And it
did she corroborate what you guys went through and saw?
absolutely, yes, sir, she did. She actually seen the craft when it landed, and the blue hazy lights that I had talked about, and the bright light when it come forward. And she wasn't the only one that witnessed it. There was another guy that was working. He was running a crane in one of the shipyards, and he happened to see this thing land. Well, he couldn't take off right then and do nothing because he had men working under him. But he collaborated everything, and it's been several more. You know, we had that probation officer, plus the police department and the sheriff department. The dispatcher at the police department said he got tired of that night because when people would call in and report seeing something or not, he would have to make notes of it. And they said he took over 50 calls on that one subject that night. And that was a pretty reliable witness. Then there was a probation officer that was driving across the bridge. Then there was a parole officer that was also coming across the bridge that seen something. And all these people called in and reported it. And it was well documented through the police department and all. But, you know, nobody, until I got ready to do this book, nobody made an effort to look these people up and hear the stories. So Philip and I, with the help of another lady, Irene Scott, looked them up. She took her narrative down and made a handwritten and done it all. And they kind of left me out of the loop on talking to them the first time. Now, I've met every one of them since then and, you know, got to talk and visit. And I've actually checked them out myself through background checks and things. They all reputable people.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, even though it was 46 years ago, how vivid is your memory of that night? Can you still see it exactly now as it happened?
I could probably see it better now than what I could then because I've actually been under hypnosis and all to help sharpen and that don't do anything but just kind of help you sharpen a few details out. And I've had it in my attention, and I've been to conventions and talked about it. And, you know, I could see it good now, better now than what I could back then, because I ain't going to lie to nobody. I was scared to death then.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And you're scared of something, you know, you take 20 different people, and they could all see a crime or something taken forward, but no two stories would be alike.
Yeah. Can you briefly describe to us what happened?
Absolutely. This was October 11th, 1973, and actually my first day to work, I had come down. I was getting married in November, and this was October. I was going to get married November the 9th. So I wanted to find a job where I wasn't working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, you know, that's what we did back then. Everybody just worked. So I called Charles Hickson up and got a job with him at the F.B. Walker and Son shipyard. And my first day at work there, he asked me, would you want to go fishing? And I said, sure, Charlie. You know, that sounds good. I said, but I got a problem. I didn't bring any of my fishing equipment. He said, well, I have plenty of equipment, so we're going to buy the house and for a man south to loan you fish equipment, he just soon give you his firstborn or his wife or something else because that just don't happen. I mean, you know, that's a big gesture for someone being on the coast down here from the south. So we went by and we got the fishing equipment, and we was in my car. And we drove over to the grain elevator first. Now, while we was fishing at the grain elevator, the bugs got so bad, we just couldn't stand it. And I said, you know, Charlie, I can stand a lot of things, but I just can't stand what's going on now. Something you can't see biting you as big as a giraffe's mouth or something. He said, well, I know another spot. Maybe that won't be that bad. So we left and went to the old Shaw Pitter shipyard, which is on the east bank. Well, it's on the east bank of the river. We was on the east bank, but we was on the west side of the east bank. And we got to get out of the car, and I noticed it was a bunch of trash and debris around. And I had mentioned to Charlie, Lord, look, why don't they keep this place up? And I said, Charlie, there's a no trespassing sign here. We fix to get in a lot of trouble fishing here. He said, I fish here all the time. And as far as the trash, when the tide comes in, it washes all this mess up. Or when the water gets high, then when it goes out, it just leaves it, and there ain't no way to keep picked up after it. So I took him at his word. I took him at his word about the trespassing. So we just kind of walked by the trespassing sign and got down to the pier. We pulled an old log up and sat on the pier. And I remember I was sitting there looking across the river at a steel ship. Now, it never really clicked on me until this day, because I was working in the shipyard. How does something made out of steel float? And I just couldn't understand it. And now, I know they make them out of concrete and everything else. But while I was looking at this ship across, and I think it was old Noah's ship or maybe a Coast Guard cutter, I noticed some lights reflecting across the water. It was some hazy blue lights. And I told Charlie, or I was thinking to myself, yeah, I'm going to jail now. Before we trespassing down here, and they fixing to run us off. Well, about that time, we both stood up and turned around. And when we did, the light got so bright, it was like a big spotlight they had put on us. And it was blinding, almost, you just barely couldn't see anything. But when our sight started coming back, and this was fast too, there was 3 bulky-looking creatures that was coming out of this craft, and they was just kind of gliding across the top of the marsh grass. Well, as they got closer, I noticed, or I was looking, and they looked like big Green Bay Packers coming toward us. They didn't have a neck or their head just kind of set all the way down on their shoulders and all. And 2 of them reached and got a hold of Charlie, and one of them got a hold of myself. Well, here I was thinking about somewhere to run, but it wasn't anywhere to run, because we had water in the front with a lot of debris in it, water on the left side of me, and water on the right, being out on that pier. Thinking back, now what I should have done was just took Charlie and put him up there in front of me and let him get him and me leave. But, it didn't quite work that way. But anyhow, 2 of them got a hold of Charlie, one got a hold of myself. And immediately when he grabbed me by the left arm, I felt an injection of some kind, or I heard a little poof of air, what I really heard. And I was relaxed. I wasn't scared no more. So later we determined that was some kind of something to get you, knock the edge off where you wasn't so scared. Well, they levitated us or levitated me. Now I lost sight of Charlie, floated me up to the front door of the craft. And I was just thinking about where did all these bright lights come from. And I was looking inside when we got to the door, and it looked like it was coming out of the paint, looked like it was just made there. And this thing got to the door and paused for a second, made a left turn. Then he made a right turn, went down a hall a little ways, turned right. It took me into what I call the examination room. And there was one of the most beautiful tables you ever seen in your life. Like it was probably glass or crystal clear. It's actually a pretty table, and I was sitting there looking. All I could do was look forward. I couldn't really move nothing. I could roll my eyes and roll my head, and that was about it. And this big, ugly thing put me on this examination table, and I'm going to call him a robot because that's the way he moved mechanical-wise. He didn't act like he had any kind of sensations and all about him. Well, he laid me at an angle on this table, and I was laying down looking straight up at the ceiling. And I noticed there's something about the size of a deck of cards. It was a little blue on the bottom. And it come down and stopped about 1.5 feet in front of my head. This thing started circling my head, and as it would circle about every quarter turn, it would give a clicking noise. And then when it clicked a few times, it got back up in front of my head and stopped. And then it shot back up into the ceiling. And that was the end of the clicking. But I could sense another presence there besides the old big ugly one that was over in the corner now. By this time, he moved over there and he just shut down more or less. But I could sense that there was something coming toward me. And I rolled my head a little bit, and this is where and I'm calling her a female, and I don't know if she was or not. I really don't know if it was male, female, or what it was. But she favored a female, and when she communicated, not by voice, but telepathically, she did it in a female's voice. So she came over, and the first thing she did was grab me by the cheek. And I did notice her fingers, her hands, on her 2 middle fingers on both her hands was a little longer than the average human hand. Now, the old robotic-looking creature, he had like crab-like hands or on his hands, but she had normal-looking hands with the exception of the 2 fingers. Well, she kind of rubbed my cheek. I didn't feel any sensation whatsoever of warmth or feelings or anything. No, couldn't smell any smells. But the shocking thing, the next thing she did was took her other hand, pushed down on my chin, and she took the 2 middle fingers and she run down my throat. Wow. And was trying to come up behind that little thing that hangs down in back of your throat. I don't know what the technical term is for it, but it just hangs down back there. Mm-hmm. And I started choking. I couldn't breathe. My nose started bleeding. So she automatically just pulled out. Now, this is the only communication I had with her then. And she said telepathically, her mouth didn't move because I was sitting there looking at it, and I was about to choke still. She says, "We're not going to harm you." But it was in like an old redneck girl's voice, like somebody, I would talk to most all the time. And I didn't understand that if they was from somewhere else. And I really wasn't for sure then where they was from. And she said, "We're not going to harm you." Then she made a mumble noise. And she did that verbally with her throat. And the old big ugly went in the creek corner over there, popped up like a jack in the box. And he come back over to me, grabbed me by the left arm again. And this is when I felt another injection going in my arm. And it just kind of settled me down. He carried me out, set me down about the same spot he put me out, except I was facing the river this time with my arms stretched out. Now, this is the first time I've heard Charlie. He said, Calvin, you okay, son?" And then we turned around and looked at the craft. He was on the ground. He stood up about the same time I did. And we turned around and looked. And this thing just picked up off the ground a little bit. Then when it got up a little ways, it just disappeared into the sky. It was so fast, like a streak of lightning.
Can you estimate how long it all took?
I would be lying if I said, but according to the time that we called the sheriff department and they came out and picked us up, and the time that we got to the fishing pier, this was probably around 5:30 because we had a good full moon that night. And about 11 o'clock before I left the sheriff department, and we was in there probably for an hour. So it was a pretty good while inside this craft. It didn't seem like it, but we spent a good deal of time in there.
Did Charles go through the same thing that you were put through?
To be real honest with you, I never talked to Charlie. I don't know what he went through. Me and him never really talked about what happened. The only conversation we had was Charlie said when we got out to the pier, well, we need to go tell somebody. I said, tell somebody what? Nothing happened to me. I don't want to tell nobody nothing, Charlie. We don't need to tell nobody this. Because that was my first day on the job, and I didn't want them to think I was crazy, and I didn't want them to get fired. I was fixing to get married. I didn't want my in-laws to think I was a slap idiot or my fiance, you know, because things just didn't happen like that you heard about back then.
Yeah. Calvin, I read somewhere where you say you're still searching for answers on what happened that night. So you still think there are blank spots that you still need to find out about?
Well, you know, that's something I'm not real sure about. I know it's a lot that I need to find out about, and a lot of others also need to find out about. But yeah, I'm still hunting answers on the truth. You know, I just mainly, who were they? Where were they from? And how come they picked me out of all these billions of people on this world? But, you know, now that I've been going to these conventions and all, listening to other people, I know, you know, I'm not just the only one that's ever been abducted. You know, it's a lot more that has.
Yeah.
So I just keep an open mind about it.
Yeah. How has it affected your life and your mental state in general?
Well, when this first happened, I was a recluse. I didn't get out. I didn't want nobody calling my name because I had the media following me around. You know, I figured once I got home, once I left my job and got home, that it'd be forgotten. You know, there'd be a little hot streak in there like they usually do, and news plays out. But it followed me for 45 years. Now, since the book came out, it's actually improved my life. You know, instead of staying to myself, I've never really talked to my wife about none of this up until we did the book. Never told my friends about none of it. And you keep a secret from your wife for 45 years, that shuts down a lot of communication, a lot of things that you do together. But then when the book came out and I started loosening it up and we talked about it some, then it opened up a whole new world for me, for us. It's improved my marriage because I finally was able to sit down and be honest with her. And I don't know how she lived with me the way she has all these years because I didn't want to do nothing but work. All I wanted to do was get up, go to work, make a little money, and come home.
Yeah.
And now we get out, we go do things together. And
well, how was your wife's reaction when you told her, you know, the details of what happened? Was she sympathetic?
Well, let me go back to when we was doing the book, I had mentioned to Philip that Bud Hopkins had tried to hypnotize me, and I don't think he ever did. Well, that put Philip on a quest. He said, well, Bud's a friend of mine, or was. He's dead now. But Dr. Jacobs has taken his work over. And let me see if I can get it. So it wasn't just a few days. Dr. Jacobs sent me an email asking permission to give Philip Mantle the transcripts of that hypnosis. I didn't figure it was nothing on them. Well, Philip transcribed them out. From what I heard, he had a little bit of a time doing all that. And he got them transcribed out in writing. Well, he emailed me a copy of it and then sent me a CD of the tape. Well, when I got it and realized I had been hypnotized, I quit reading it altogether right then because I didn't want it to put memories in my head that wasn't there. And what had happened, Bud had put a post-hypnotic suggestion in my head. But what I did, I was back here working on the book, and I walked out. I told my wife, she was on the front porch. And I said, you know, that guy did hypnotize me in Florida. And there's something to that because I don't remember being hypnotized. What I want you to do is go back and read it and keep it in mind. And as my memory comes back, I tell you, and you see if that's right. Well, she came back into the room, stayed in here probably 45 minutes, and she come out crying. She said, I can't read no more. I can't talk about it no more. I don't want to know nothing else about it. So that's when it really hit her what had happened in depth, then. Up until then, she just, whatever she'd hear on the news media, and she was like me, she thought it was all a joke anyway, the way the news media presented it.
Yeah. Are you at peace with it all yet?
Well, yes, sir, I am in one way. In another way, I don't like the ideal of being a crime. And I'm calling it a crime because it's like if I'm sitting here on my couch watching TV and somebody kicks my door down and grabs me and takes me out to the van and examines me and all, that's home invasion. That's a crime. But I don't know if I would have gave them permission to do whatever they done to me or not. Well, I'm almost sure I wouldn't. I'd probably shot them if I'd had a gun on me that night. Yeah. But I'm at peace with what happened. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you still get some skepticism from people?
Every now and then, I don't pay it much attention, but I go in and I read some remarks that a few people make here and there, especially when I'm on things. I did a show on Fox News with Waters World, and you go down and you read a little bit. Then that sketch TV, they had somebody make a remark, and this girl lives in Colorado, never heard of her before in my life, and she said he ain't nothing but a wife-beaten drunk from a wife-beaten state, Pascagoula. And, something like that kind of would boil my blood. But that's not me. I mean, I just tell just what happened to me, and I'm honest about it. But if anybody believes it, that's good. If they don't, that's good, because I don't want to live in a world where everybody believes the same thing and everything that everybody says.
Yeah. I've often wondered, Calvin, and obviously Charles was the one who wanted to go and tell the police, but if you had it all over to do again, would you have done it differently?
No, sir.
If you had kept quiet, would this ever have come out?
No, it wouldn't have never come out. I never would have. If it was just me there, nobody would know about it but me till today. This is just something, I was brought up with sharecroppers, we'd farm people's land and all that. Then I went to work in the oil field. And we never had time to watch TV or study about things from anywhere else. There wasn't any social media, cell phones or anything. So I feel like, Charlie brought it up and he's kept it alive all these years. And I've seen what it done to him. It pretty much, hurt him in a lot of ways. He went from a good, productive job to not doing nothing and, living less than payday to payday. Mm-hmm. And that's not the kind of life I wanted. I've always said the only thing I wanted out of life was to get married, buy a home, have children, have grandchildren, retire and fish. And that's all I ever wanted in life. I didn't want all this other bull to go along with it.
Yeah.
But now that it's been dumped in your lap, I've accepted it and I just take it for what it's worth. For the first time in my whole life, me and my wife's, if you can call it vacations, going to these conferences together, we never really took vacations and all. But now we kind of get out. When I go to a conference, I buy her plane ticket. They buy mine. Well, it works out pretty good. We go and we get to visit. We talk to people. And we've actually had fun and communicate. And I've got to take her different places in this world.
Yep.
So, it's been nice.
Before that night in 1973, did you believe in UFOs?
I had no idea what a UFO was or an alien. The only thing I could think of was when we got abducted, was I remember watching the Apollo space missions, and how when they came back down to Earth, they would quarantine them from their families for 7 days. They wouldn't even let nobody in to see them. And after this happened, I felt like we might have had a virus or radiation or something. And I was concerned about it. I didn't want to give this to nobody else. And I told the sheriff, Fred Diamond, that we needed to be checked out because I didn't want to give nobody the virus. And he is actually the one that took us to the Singing River Hospital here in Jackson County and got tests done and all, and took us and had us checked for radiation.
Okay. That night at the sheriff's department, I think the compelling smoking gun, from what I could see, is when they left you and Charlie in the interview room together, and they left the recording going. And I mean, you guys just acted like you'd been abducted by aliens, when they went back and looked at the tape.
Yeah, and I actually, now I don't say that the disbelieved us up until then, but I actually think that they thought there was something else going on. And then when they put us in the same room together, and we didn't realize they had a tape recorder in there, Charlie and I was talking about this, and the sheriff come out. Now, Fred Diamond was pretty hard-nosed sheriff, and he come out and listened to that tape, and then he gave his little news release the next day that there was no doubt in his mind that something happened to us. He wasn't for sure, but, so... that was the biggest convincing evidence that night that it was. That's what I call the secret tape.
Did the sheriff ever tell you personally, you and Charlie, that he believed your story?
He told me, he said, I know something happened to you, son, and I'm worried about you and concerned, and I want to, you're right, you probably do need to go to the hospital and get checked and all. Mm-hmm. But he never said, well, we believe you've seen aliens or nothing. Of course, back then, I didn't know what I'd seen. There for a little while, I thought, well, maybe this is a bunch of rednecks got a hold of some experimental craft that the shipyard was working on. And they rode out there and picked us up having fun and all. And it was just a big joke to them. But, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Calvin, is there a movie being made or going to be made?
Well, it's hard to really ever be sure about this. We have got a guy doing a pitch for a movie right now, and we got somebody working on a screenplay. We've had 3 or 4 drafts of screenplays already, and we're trying to keep them as realistic as what we can. So, we usually reject a screenplay if it's not right, and they go back and they redo it. And we own about our 4th draft now that they're reworking. Yeah. So I think one day, there's no doubt in my mind, it's going to be a movie on this.
Yeah. I've heard Travis Walton say a few times that Fire in the Sky, the movie on his incident back in the 70s, I mean, he said there was, it was part truth, part fabricated for Hollywood, which I was surprised. But, and speaking of Travis, another famous abductee, have you ever met Travis? Do you meet up?
I did. I met Travis at this last convention I was at in Phoenix, Arizona, UFO Congress. And we had never met. We spoke, a few times, but we actually got to sit down and visit with each other there. And, Travis has quite a story. And like you said, I don't think that anybody can put a movie out without adding a little something different in the movie. Mm-hmm. Now, we're trying to keep the facts right in ours, but, they might have to add a different color car or something that's coming down, or maybe have 2 or 3 less police officers than what we had seen and things like that, just to cut the budgets in the movie. So, it's no way that a movie can stay true to the exact. And like I said earlier, you get 20 witnesses, you're going to have 20 different stories on something that happened.
Yep.
And being I'm the only live one, they have Charlie's book and they have myself and what we told. And when it boils right down to it, two people that really know the truth. Now, I'm telling the truth as best as I can. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. But the truth, what I'm trying to say again, Charlie might have seen something a little different than what I seen. But I know what I'm telling is true, though. There's no doubt in my mind.
Have you experienced other close encounters since that night?
In 1993, I had somewhat of a close encounter. And this actually came out in hypnosis with Bud Hopkins. And what I found out is, and then my memory started coming back on it when it got jogged. But in 93, it was pretty much the same beings or whatever they were. And they had tried it again, and me and her actually got into a physical competition on the ship.
Wow.
And, I beat her head against the wall. I was tired of being taken against my will.
Yeah.
But I really think they had come back to get some kind of something out of me that she might have left in me, maybe something to keep track of where you are, or your health or something. Mm-hmm. So, it's just really hard to say why they come back. Yeah. But not since then I hadn't.
Calvin, do you still visit the spot where the abduction took place?
Yes, sir, I do. They got a plaque put up there now. Mm-hmm. City of Pascagoula had a historical plaque put there. And it's by the boat landing. So when I launch a boat over that way, of course, I can go sit down and I kind of look at things, think about things. Because you can see the place where we got abducted right there from where the plaque is. Yeah. And I'm over there quite regular. Every now and then, somebody with the press wants to meet over there and do an interview. Yeah. And I do that. But it's not but 25 minutes from my house by boat. Yeah. So sometime I get my boat and run over there.
I mean, despite everything that happened to you, it must make you feel pretty good that the town has actually put a plaque there to actually commemorate the incident.
This has been the greatest place in the world for acceptance. I've been well accepted in Jackson County and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And these people have really been great to me and good to me. And this is a lot of the reason I come out is because of the people around here. I know where I live now in this subdivision, nobody would tell anybody where I was or who I was or anything because I'd ask them not to. Mm-hmm. And these people have been great. Everything from the mayor to the historical society and everybody else. I can't think of a person around here that hadn't been good to me, and I appreciate them.
Do you have any advice for other people that have experienced a similar thing to you and kept quiet about it?
Yes, sir, I do. If this happened nowadays in time, there's enough people out, and I found that out on Facebook. Before I wasn't a social media fan or anything, but Facebook has put me in touch with a lot of people that's been through the same experiences. They need to contact somebody and get some help dealing with it, because this isn't something easy to deal with. I mean, it's something that stays on your mind. You're there for a while. Of course, I can't say I'm afraid of going fishing or anything again, because me and my wife, sometimes we get up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and go. But you never know when you walk out the door what's going to happen next. So I would suggest that they talk to somebody and get some help with it, get some counseling somehow with somebody that knows how to deal with this subject.
Calvin, I don't know how hard and deep you think about the whole UFO alien phenomena, but do you have any thoughts about disclosure, about whether all this is going to be brought out into the open?
I feel like it will. It's just too big a thing, and there's too many people know about it to really be kept quiet and secret for too much longer, I believe. Sooner or later, everybody's laundry's got to air. And even with politics, the way that they are, if those idiots would all quit fighting each other and start getting along, we could be a lot better off, a lot further in this world.
Yeah.
But I think the alien race is just like the races here on Earth. We got all different kind of races. We got Muslim, Buddhist, and, everything in here. And none of them get along too much, one religion with the other religion. But sooner or later, they're going to have to come to terms with things. You got some good people. You got some bad people, and you got some pure damn mean people. And I think all the good's going to come together before long.
Okay. Well, Calvin, I really appreciate you giving us your time today. It's been a fascinating discussion, and fingers crossed that they do make a movie and they do keep it pretty close to what happened.
I'm going to do my best. Philip and I both going to do our best to make sure that it does. And the guy that's selling the pitch, he's the same way. He wants it to be accurate.
Okay.
But once somebody gets the rights, you never know which way to go.
Okay. Well, Calvin, thank you very much, and God bless, and all the best in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
That's Calvin Parker joining us on the Paranormal UK radio network. Next week, we look at the UFO Bible connection with ace researcher, author and filmmaker L.A. Marzulli.
Well, spiritual entities can certainly be physical entities. In other words, let's just go back to the biblical narrative. For those of you who believe in the narrative, this might, you'll just shrug your shoulders and go, yeah, okay. For others, this may be something different. But when Jesus is crucified and is killed, 2,000 years ago, and he rises again from the dead, according to what Christians believe. Of course, that's my belief too. But he shows up to the apostles. The apostles are all in this upper room. They're all freaked out. Maybe we're next, right? What's going to happen? And this is all, the documented evidence of it. So he comes in through the wall. He just comes right in through the wall. And we know you can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. And he appears to them, and they're all freaked out. They think it's a ghost. And he goes, not so fast. What do you guys got to eat? He sits down and he has a meal with them. They bring him some fish and bread, and he eats it with them. And then he just vanishes again. Hello! I mean, that's just like, when we look at that, you see, the problem is most, especially in modernity, most people in the West have this really truncated view of the supernatural. And it's so much more complex than anything we can possibly conceive. So we've got this really narrow, truncated view. Angels are on clouds with harps and all this crazy stuff, which has nothing to do with anything. First of all, angelic beings are so powerful that when they do appear, people do face plants. In fact, that's literally what the biblical narrative says. It says this, I'm quoting, and when the angel appeared, I fell on my face. So that's a face plant. I mean, we can tap dance around that, but it's a face plant. So these entities are really, really powerful, both the good ones and the bad ones. When the bad ones appear, and I spoke at the Arkansas UFO. I was the keynote there this year, which is a real honor for me. So I spoke to the crowd, and I just said, how many of you think it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old and implant them? Not one hand went up. Not one. Like 500 people in the room. Not one hand. They all know, viscerally, instinctively, that it's not cool to abduct a 5-year-old and put something in his body without his parents' consent. They all know that. And I looked at him and I said, you just proved my point. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing here? It's not a good thing. So why are we saying that these entities are benevolent and we just don't understand them and all this other stuff? So, look, the whole UFO thing is a saying I wrote years ago, real, burgeoning, and not going away. And that's, a 25-year-old phrase, whatever it is. And they're here. Disclosure is happening. Things are happening. But I've called it, and I've called it this for 20 years, this is the coming great deception. This will change the entire planet, and everyone will just go ding like this and, believe whatever these entities tell us to believe.
Marzulli is one of the go-to people on the subject of UFOs in the Bible. He'll share some controversial but pertinent views with us. We also talk at length about the 1917 Miracle of Fatima. Was it a miracle or a UFO event? LA's answer is quite stunning. That's coming up next week on Aliens Revealed live on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, thanks for being with us. Don't forget to check out our site at arlhub.com. That's arlhub.com. Next week, more from the Aliens Revealed live files. And as always, keep looking upwards and take care.